Hello and welcome to yet another reading from Fated Mates of the Drakoan. Um, this is my alien romance serial, and I feel like I'm all out of sorts today. It's fine. Let me introduce myself. My name is Danielle Forrest. I'm an alien romance author and YouTuber, and today we're going to be reading from my alien romance serial, Fated Mates of the Drakoan. This is episode 16, titled The Light of Day. So let's get started. Davin was immediately happy as Jess approached, the urge to go to her overwhelming. A moment later, pain flared on his head, giving him a brief moment of clarity. He looked down, confused at the pure rage staring up at him. But like a cloud that had only briefly been dispelled by a gust, his instincts slowly took control again, only this time he was more aware of it. He struggled to focus, to take in enough information to know why Jess was mad at him. But it was hard. His senses were being assaulted from every direction, each new bit of information vying for attention. But none of them were what he needed to focus on. He needed to focus on Jess, on why she was angry, but some things he simply couldn't ignore, like the scent of several people looming nearby. Threats. He shook his head to drive the intrusive thought out, belatedly realizing that Jess was yelling at him. He tried to ignore his nose by only breathing through his mouth, then zeroed in on her again. Have you been ignoring me this entire time? She shrieked, hurting his ears. No, he said, but even the brief inhale through his mouth afterward had his attention waning. He jerked his head up and spotted several individuals standing near the corner of the house, spying on them eagerly. He growled at them. Some of the tension went out of Jess for a brief moment before it came back full force and she hit him again. Davin jerked back, surprised. What was that for? Don't growl at my friends. He looked up over her head at the group of people. There were 5 of them. And it didn't take long for the little bit of logic oozing into his brain to recognize that none of them was likely a threat. He could easily take each of them out, probably even all at once. He tried to dismiss them from his mind, but it was hard. Logically, he knew they weren't a threat, but his mind and body weren't exactly listening to logic at the moment. He shifted his attention to Jess instead, but that wasn't much better. He could get lost in her, and while a part of him wanted to do that, another part knew he couldn't. Focusing on her was all he wanted to do. All it would take was a brief whiff, and he would be lost. But he knew he couldn't do that. He didn't want to do that. He couldn't afford to do. Suddenly, his attention was jarred from his internal struggles when Jess grabbed the front of his shirt, dragging him down to her level. Hey, I was talking to you. I'm sorry. What did you say? She frowned, let go, then took a step back, her eyes looking tired. I said, what are you doing here? His mind scrambled for the right thing to say, but impulses rather than words came to mind. It took him precious moments to translate those impulses into words. I needed to know you were okay, he said finally. She scoffed, relaxing her grip slightly. Bullshit. You said you were going to focus on your mission. You lied. He looked away. I couldn't help myself. That's not good enough. You have a mission to complete. You have people counting on you. Does anyone even know you're here? He shook his head and cringed, the mention of his team finally making him realize the day had dawned. He didn't know when it had happened, but the sky was now light blue, most of the flamboyant colors of sunrise long gone. Though the sun was not yet visible over the trees, there was no kidding himself. The gloom of night was no more. They're probably awake now. Heat burned under his scales. He'd told himself he would be back before they woke. He couldn't even get that right. What the hell was happening to him? Davin looked around himself, trying to recall why he hadn't turned back. He told himself he would just check to make sure she was okay, then go back to the shuttle. He remembered reaching her home, confirming to himself that Jess had arrived safely, but most of the rest of the night was a bit of a blur. Why had he stayed around? Why hadn't he gone back to the shuttle? He had this vague sense of a tug of war inside himself, but couldn't quite fathom why he hadn't done what he was supposed to do in the first place. Dan is probably furious with me. Embarrassed, he looked back down at Jess. She was furious with him as well. I'm sorry. He wondered what he could do to fix this, to make it up to her, and now, for the first time, he truly understood the full breadth of why people took the anti-mating medications. There was nothing worse than disappointing his mate, and he couldn't seem to stop doing it. He couldn't control himself. That was all a normal part of biological mating, wasn't it? Because of the mating, his mind and body were on entirely different trajectories. His mind, when it was clear enough, was often in utter chaos, knowing full well that he needed to get a hold of himself while also feeling the pull of the mating screaming at him. Meanwhile, his body just calmly ignored those muted pleas for logic to reign, instead barreling forward wherever his instincts drew him, like his brain wasn't even involved in the process. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know how to fix this. But he had to fix this. He couldn't keep going on like this. He sighed. I am so sorry, he said again, this time reaching out and holding her hands in his own, hoping his sincerity would get through. I never want to let you down. Ever. Okay. Next scene. Jess frowned up at Davin, realizing for the first time just how much taller than her he was. It was honestly the first annoying part of him she'd discovered, and damn it, she found it endearing for some stupid reason. Not helpful. She turned around, taking in the way her friends were watching like it was a soap opera, and shook her head, then tried to shoo them away. She could see the curiosity in each of their expressions, some more eager than others. Scotty, for example, looked like he was about to blow a gasket. In fact, he was chewing his nails like he was craving popcorn and needed something to curb the oral fixation. Jess glared at them, and one by one they turned the corner and disappeared. When the yard finally lapsed into silence, she turned back to Davin. The tension and anger were gone, leaving only resignation and an overpowering inclination to forgive. She was afraid to speak for fear that the words, I forgive you, would slip from her mouth unbidden. Weirdly, she had forgiven him, even though she knew she couldn't tell him that. He needed to learn to correct his behavior. No matter how much their mating left her willing to pretty much let him walk all over her, she needed to set boundaries and set this relationship on the right path. With the weird mating business between them, it would be so easy for their relationship to be a toxic mess that was healthy for neither of them. She was determined to keep that from happening, no matter how hard it might be to pull off, when every atom of her being was telling her to cuddle him like a great big teddy bear. Jess sucked in a fortifying breath, determined to make this right. She wanted their relationship to be healthy. Davin seemed like a good person, and while she had no idea where this was going, she didn't want this to end up as the plot of a B-rate horror movie. She needed to do something to set them on a good path, and every good relationship started with good communication, right? Okay, here goes. You realize what you did was wrong, right? Yes, I'm sorry. Sorry isn't good enough. You sent me away for a reason. Would you like to tell me what it was? Davin paused, then looked away like a child being scolded. To protect you, he said, his voice almost inaudible. Jess frowned. To protect me? Then why did you show up? If keeping me away was to protect me, then why did you come back? I needed to know you were okay. Not good enough, she said, poking him in the chest with her index finger. nor does it sound like you're truly sorry. What are you sorry about? What are you going to do to improve? I do we even understand why what you did was so wrong? I Things aren't the way they used to be, where a person could just show up at your house, ring the doorbell, and visit. We're in the middle of a global chaos crisis. Anyone who visits could potentially be a looter, a killer, an enemy combatant. We have no way of knowing. And lurking outside in the yard? That is terrifying and creepy as hell. You scared the living shit out of Inez and sent the entire household into a panic. I didn't know. No, you didn't think. She reached up and tapped his temple. You're a commander. You have to think about these things, Davin. And where's your team? Where's Van? Are they safe? They're at the shuttle. She nodded. Okay. So the question remains, how are you going to do better? He looked down at her. She could see every emotion in his eyes, and there was a lot. Remorse, confusion, fear, yearning. I'm afraid I won't be able to control myself. I tried. I really did. I sent you away for your own good, but then I couldn't sleep. So instead I stayed up trying to get some work done, but I couldn't focus. The longer I was awake, the more my thoughts revolved around you, until the thought that you might not have gotten home safe entered my mind and wouldn't leave. I couldn't let it go. So I told myself I would just come by and check. I told myself I would be back before dawn, before anyone woke up, which you clearly didn't. He shook his head. No, I didn't. I couldn't get myself to walk away. It's all a bit fuzzy, but I remember the struggle. I don't think I could walk away no matter how much I wanted to. She sighed, the last of her ire completely gone, replaced by empathy. What are we going to do? I don't know. I want to tell you I won't do it again, but I'm afraid that would be a lie. I honestly thought I could before. It was a little easier when you were farther away. My mind was clearer. I thought if my mind was clearer, then I could control myself better. But I was wrong. I had no idea how hard this would be. But isn't it part of your culture? I guess I'd never taken it that seriously. I'd hardly ever thought about it. For me, getting away from my busy family and advancing my career were my main focuses. He looked away, frowning in thought. I guess if I'm being honest with myself, I always just thought that the people who seemed to lose all control had let themselves get that way. I'd told myself that they'd thrown themselves into the feeling of being mated, and that was why they had no control. After all, plenty of people reject matings when they happen, even without medication. Okay, then why didn't you take the medication? He glanced off to the side, thinking for several moments. I guess part of it was that my parents had a biological mating, but also military personnel rarely take it. It's a risk, but there are side effects if you do, so most don't. Just frowned. Wouldn't the general public care about the side effects too? He shrugged. Some do, but most don't. It's the type of thing that matters more in survival, not modern society. Fight or flight responses, stamina, muscle development. It doesn't really affect the average citizen, but those things can be actively harmful to people in the military. It's odd. She nodded slowly, wondering why an anti-mating drug would have those types of side effects. They seemed very specific, and like nothing she would have anticipated. She could have imagined fertility issues, maybe, though she supposed testosterone was associated with muscle development and stamina in humans, so it could make some sense. Okay, so where do we go from here? I don't know. Thought staying away would help, and I was wrong. What do you think I should do? Just sighed. She wanted to help, to have all the answers and be able to tell him the best course of action, but she didn't know either. Then again, maybe she was overcomplicating this. Maybe she should be thinking of it as a normal relationship. So then, what advice would she give in a normal relationship? She took the mating out of it. What would be the right course of action? Okay, she said, nodding her head as she started to organize her thoughts. I'll give it a shot. I guess you have to do what you say. If you don't, I can't trust you. And I need to trust your word if this is going to work. How do I do that when I can't even trust my own body anymore? She frowned. She could relate, but there had to be a solution, right? Presumably, plenty of people on his home planet made this work. They could too, even if it was in some rather extraordinary circumstances. They just had to not set unreasonable expectations. I don't know, she said, shaking her head again. I guess just don't make any promises you're not sure you can keep. He nodded. Anything else? Don't creep outside my house anymore. Just knock on the door, okay? He nodded again. Anything else? Jess's mind went blank. She looked around her, as if her surroundings had the answer, but there was nothing. Just the empty side yard dappled in morning sunlight. Then she remembered how this conversation had started, with Davin lurking and scaring the crap out of her roommates. What if someone else reacts that way? She jerked her head to the side, noticing the direct line of sight between their location and the street. Currently, it was empty, but that could change at any moment. She started to feel uneasy, and the urge to flee gripped her. What if someone saw Davin and assumed he was an invading alien and not a good one? What if they attacked him? What if they somehow blamed her and her roommates, thinking they were working with the enemy? Anything could happen in times like this. Her skin grew cold and she rubbed her arms, swiftly deciding they needed to get out of sight. Come on, she said, reaching out a hand. I'll introduce you to my friends. As she gripped her hand, his big, warm paw swallowing up her own, a new worry started to filter into her brain. What if they don't like him? All right, that's episode 16 of Fated Mates of the Drakoan. Thank you for listening or watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and feel free to let me know in the comments what you liked about it and what you think is going to happen next. How will her friends react to him, especially after the scare they've already experienced because of him? Um, that's, like I said, that's all for now. Consider giving the video a like, subscribing to the channel, and hitting the bell if you want notifications. And my brain just stopped. It's fine. I'm fine. Check out my links in the description of the video. You can find the various ways to connect with me and my content, my stories and stuff in the description, including becoming a member of my Interstellar crew, where you can read ahead by 5 episodes on Fated Mates. So if that's something you're interested in, consider checking that out. Anyway, let's see. I'm gonna put, if you're watching this on replay, I'm gonna put some stuff on the screen so you can check out my other content. But you can also just click over to my channel and check out my other playlists. I routinely do a productivity live streams 4 to 5 days a week. I also have a weekly Sims 4 Alien Romance live Let's Play that I do once a week, and a few other alien romance related uh, things that I might do. So feel free to check out the cards that will eventually be on the screen here, and check out my other playlists and stuff. Until next time.